Hey guys, Rebecca here from yarnandchai.com, and I am teaming up with Hobby Lobby to teach you how to crochet my autumn boho pillow. For this pattern, I'm using Breathe Deep Yarn by Yarn Bee, which you can find at your local Hobby Lobby store or online at hobbylobby.com. This category 4 100% polyester yarn is so soft, and it has this sort of weathered rustic look to it, which is really perfect for our pillow. And when I was working with it, I found that it really didn't split at all, and it felt great against my sensitive skin, which is really important to me. It comes in a line of really pretty colors, and for this pillow, you'll need 185 yards of color A, I used sage, 160 yards of color B, I used ivory, and 65 yards of color C, and I used brown sugar. I also grabbed a skein of Yarn Bee's Forever Style in ivory for my pillow edging. This yarn is as soft and squishy as it looks, and if fur yarn intimidates you, don't worry about it. This is the perfect project to practice on because we only use a little, but it adds such a cozy finishing touch. I actually used a different yarn for my second sample. This is Yarn Bee's Rustic Romantic in Red Rhodes and Oaky Wheat. And because I wanted to balance out the heathered look of this yarn, for the ivory I used Yarn Bee's Must Be Merino, which is a super soft, super smooth yarn. You're also going to need a 4.5mm hook, and I'm using my Yarnology hook for this project. I love these hooks because not only do they have a padded grip, but they also have this little bump at the top for your finger or your thumb to rest on to make sure that you're holding your hook comfortably and it's not slipping around on you. Yarnology hooks are available at Hobby Lobby, and while you're there, you'll also want to grab a 12-inch square pillow insert. Your gauge for this pattern is 11 rows of 9 single crochets equals 2 inches square. There is no stitch multiple for this pattern, so it's really easy to resize it. Just make sure that you start with an even number of chains and shoot for a width and a height that's about 1/4 inch smaller than the pillow that you're covering. So grab your supplies and let's get started. To begin this pattern, we're going to start with color A, and we're just going to begin with a classic slip knot. And we're going to chain 50. For row 1, we're going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in each remaining chain across. And you can decide whether you want to go into the back bump, which is a little bit more challenging, but gives you a nice clean edge, or you can go into the back loop. And that's a whole lot easier and quicker, and for this pattern it really doesn't make too much of a difference, so I am going to go into that back loop. So that was the second chain from the hook, and each remaining chain do a single crochet, and your stitch count at the end of row 1 and for every row in this entire pattern is going to be 49. For row 2, we're just going to chain 1 and turn our work, and we're going to single crochet in each stitch across. For row 3, we're going to do the same thing, chain 1, turn our work, and single crochet in each stitch across. Now at the end of this row, we're going to pull up a loop and remove our hook. So when I get to the end of my row, I will show you how to do that. Just go ahead and single crochet across. I've just come to the end of row 3, and my instructions now tell me to pull up a loop and remove my hook. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to pull the stitch up 2 or 3 inches and take my hook out. And the reason for that is because we don't want this to come unraveled. We're going to start working our ivory yarn, our color B, and we are not attaching the second color in the way that you normally would. If you were going to be doing normal stripes, what you would do is you would attach the yarn, you would put it over this hook and pull it through and then pull this tight, and nothing would come unraveled. But that's not how we're going to do this to achieve the textured effect on the pillow. So we're going to remove our hook And if you want to, if you're really concerned about this coming undone, you can put a stitch marker in between the loop, and then no matter how much this gets pulled, it won't actually come all the way out. So if you have a bobby pin or a stitch marker laying around, you can use that. Okay, so for row 4, without turning your work, insert your hook into the first stitch from row 3 and attach color B, which is the ivory. So here's what we're doing. Without turning our work, we're going to insert our hook into the first stitch from that previous row. That's right here. This is where we're going to bring in our second color. And we're going to chain 1 here. And that attaches our color B. So now we're going to single crochet in each stitch across. That chain 1 does not count as a stitch, so we're going to go ahead and reinsert our hook into those first loops, and we're going to complete a single crochet, and that is the first stitch. And then we are going to continue to single crochet across. At the end of row 4, we are going to do the same thing. We're going to pull up a loop a few inches tall, and we're going to remove our hook. For row 5A, and I will explain the A once we get to the B. For row 5A, we're going to reinsert our hook into the loop from color A. And we want to make sure that we're inserting it from behind the previous color's loop and working yarn. So what that means is we need to get our hook reinserted into color A, which is the sage, but we want to make sure that we're working behind the previous loop and working yarn from the row before. So I'm going to just fold that over, and I'm going to reinsert from back here. So I'm making sure that both the loop and the working yarn are in front, and I'm reinserting into the loop from color A. Now I want to point out something really quick to you in case you don't know how to tell which way to insert your hook into a loop. We're going to be doing this all throughout this pattern, so it's a good thing to know. When you insert your hook and then you pull the yarn in front of the hook should be the one that's moving. If you inserted it wrong, let's say your loop just kind of got turned around and you weren't quite sure and you inserted it wrong here, if you do it this way and you pull that working yarn, you're going to see that the yarn that's moving the most is the one behind the hook, and that's not right. We want to make sure that that moving yarn is in front of the hook. Okay, so reinsert, pull that down and chain 1, and then turn your work. And again, because we made sure that we inserted from behind the ivory yarn, now that we've turned our work, the ivory yarn's loop and working yarn should be in the back, and our current working yarn is in the front. Okay, so for row 5A, we chained 1 and turned, and now we're going to single crochet in each stitch across. Now it's a little bit turned funny, so just make sure that you're putting it in the very first stitch from the previous row and do a single crochet. And then we're going to do that all the way across, single crochet. At the end of row 5A, we're going to pull up a loop again and remove our hook. And now moving on to 5B. We're going to turn our work and reinsert our hook into the loop from color B. Pull that down, and now we're going to chain 1 and turn. So the only reason we did that first turn was to get back to that loop, and now we're chaining 1 and turning like we normally would to start a new row. And for this row, we are going to single crochet spike stitch in each stitch across. So I'm going to show you how to do the single crochet spike stitch. Now normally, if we were going to single crochet regular across this row, we would locate the first set of loops, which are right here. And we would insert our hook into those first loops like this and create our single crochet. And that's what we've been doing up to this point. For a single crochet spike stitch, instead of inserting your hook into those top loops, get real close for you here, we are going to follow that stitch down. So if these are the top loops, then right below those and slightly to the left, you're going to see a V, which is a set of 2 loops that meet together right here. It's kind of difficult to see on the very first stitch because this is turned a little bit. So let me show you on another stitch that's farther along. Okay, so if we were going to do a spike stitch on this stitch, if these are the top loops, then these are the loops that form the V, and there's a little hole right here, and that's where we're going to insert our hook. So go ahead and locate that on that very first stitch. That's the hardest one to find, but the nice thing about it is that V does create a little hole there, and so if you are having any trouble getting your hook through, you're probably not in the right place, because this is a very easy place to insert your hook, and we're just going to do a single crochet like that. Okay, moving on to the next one. These are the top loops of the next stitch, so follow that down, find that V, and where that V meets at the bottom, we're going to insert our hook and do another single crochet. And the reason that this row is 5B is because, as you can see, we are completing our single crochets right over the top of the single crochets from 5A. So if you were to look at this row, especially later on in the pattern when we've moved beyond it, you would look at this and you would think, especially from this side, that this is the same row. The green and the ivory over it, if you're counting your rows that you've done, so like let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these look like the same row. And so later on in the pattern, in order to help make it easier for you to keep track of your rows, we're going to call this 5A and 5B, because when you're counting, it only looks like one. And I don't want you to get confused. So go ahead and single crochet spike stitch all the way down your work. And just so you know, right now we are looking at the wrong side of our pillowcase. So when you turn it over, this is actually the pattern that you're going to see. At the end of row 5B, we're going to pull up our loop again and remove our hook. And for row 6, we're going to reinsert our hook into the loop from color A, which is the sage, making sure again to insert from behind the ivory. So we're going to pull that loop and the working yarn forward, and we're going to reinsert our hook into the sage color A. Chain 1, turn our work, and single crochet in each stitch across. We're doing a normal single crochet now, not a spike stitch anymore, so we're going to go ahead and work right into the top loops of the previous row, which is the opposite color, and complete our single crochets all the way down the row. For row 7, we're going to chain 1 and turn, and sticking with our current yarn, we're going to go ahead and single crochet again in each stitch across. This is the end of row 7, and for row 8, we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and again we're going to single crochet in each stitch across. And I just want to note that row 8 is actually going to be the beginning of our section of repeats. And you don't have to remember that right now, but we will be coming back to it. So go ahead and single crochet all the way across. At the end of row 8, we're going to pull up a loop and remove the hook. And then we're going to turn our work to get back to color B, which is our ivory. So go ahead and reinsert your hook into that loop. And as you can see, there's quite a jump from where we are to where we need to get. So instead of chaining 1, we're going to chain 2 here. 1, 2, and then we're going to turn our work and go ahead and just insert your hook into that first set of loops to make your first single crochet. This row is single crochet all the way across. And you don't have to worry about the messiness over here because we're going to hide that all inside the pillow when we put the edging on. You're going to go ahead and single crochet all the way across. At the end of row 9, pull up your loop and remove your hook. And for row 10A, we're going to reinsert our hook into the loop from color A, again making sure that the loop and working yarn from what we just did is in front, and we're going to insert our hook behind that into our green yarn. Chain 1, turn your work, and single crochet in each stitch across. At the end of row 10A, pull up your loop and remove your hook. For row 10B, turn your work and reinsert your hook into the loop from color B. Chain 1 and turn your work. And for this row, we're going to be doing our single crochet spike stitch. So let's make sure that we start in the right place here. These are the top loops of our first stitch. So we turn that so that we can really see it good. This is where our hook will be inserted, the bottom of that V of the very first stitch, and we'll do a single crochet spike stitch. Moving on to the next one. And we're going to single crochet spike stitch all the way down the row. At the end of your spike stitches in row 10B, pull up your loop and remove your hook. And then for row 11, we're going to reinsert our hook into the loop from color A. And of course, we are going to make sure that the loop and working yarn from the previous row are in front. And we're going to reinsert our hook into color A, chain 1, and turn our work. We're going to single crochet in each stitch across. And for row 12, we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and again single crochet across. So that's the end of row 12, and here's what we have so far. This is actually the back of, the inside of the pillow insert, and this is what it looks like on the outside, the side that you're going to see. And what we're going to do now is begin a series of repeats. We're going to be repeating rows 8 through 12, so that includes 8, 9, 10A, 10B, 11, and 12, and we're going to be repeating that 7 more times before we switch to another color. I'm going to go ahead and put the instructions for each of those rows up on the screen, and you can pause it as you work through them. And I'm going to do a little recap of each one. So if you need to go back to an individual row just to remember exactly how to do it, you won't need to go all the way back. You can just look at this recap and hopefully it will help. So for row 8, we're chaining 1 and turning, single crochet in each stitch across, and then pull up your loop and remove your hook. For row 9, turn your work and reinsert your hook into the loop from color B. Chain 2, turn, single crochet across, remove your hook. Row 10A, Reinsert your hook into the loop from color A, making sure, of course, that you bring the previous color's loop and working yarn forward. So reinsert your hook from the back, chain 1 and turn, single crochet across, and remove your hook. Row 10B. Turn your work and reinsert your hook into the loop from color B. Chain 1 and turn, and single crochet spike stitch across. Remove your hook. Row 11, reinsert your hook into the loop from color A from behind the previous color's loop and working yarn, chain 1 and turn, and single crochet across. Row 12, chain 1 and turn, single crochet across. So go ahead and repeat that sequence 7 times, and then we will join back together after that. I've just finished those repeats, and this would be row 47 that I just completed. And if you count, you should have 9 of these white stripes going up your work, and that's how you'll know that you did the right number of repeats. And all we're going to do now is switch out color A for color C. And I am using the brown sugar. And we're going to continue on and do the repeats again 3 more times. So starting with that row 8, but instead of color A, we're working with color C now. So to change colors, I'm just going to put that new color on my hook and pull it through. Pull down on that color A. And chain 1 with color C. And the repeat for row 8 is chain 1 and turn. So I'm going to turn my work and I'm going to single crochet in each stitch across. And I'm literally going to just follow the exact same pattern that I have been doing this entire time, just with the new color. So go ahead and do that repeat 3 more times. I just finished my final repeat, and something that I want to call your attention to, because we are making a pillow cover for a specific measurement of pillow, in this case the 12-inch, we want to make sure that the height of our square here is just under the 12-inch mark. And I just measured mine, and I'm at about 11¼ inches from bottom to top here. And so I'm going to go ahead and go into the next set of repeats again to the next row, which would be a repeat of row 8. And I'm going to go ahead and chain 1 and turn and single crochet across, just like row 8 says to get me to about 11½ inches, because that is the goal. I don't want to go right up to 12 inches because I want the pillow cover to stretch over the pillow just a little bit, but I also don't want it to be too small because then it will warp the pillow. So we're going for 11½ inches tall here. So whatever you need to do to get to that measurement, you can do. If you need to add another row or 2, you can do that. If you need to take away rows, you can do that as well. It does not matter what row you stop on, nearly as much as it matters that we get some nice measurements here. So we're going for 11½ inches, and I'm going to go ahead and just finish up this final row to get me to 11½. Okay, and that is my final row, and I have fastened off all of my yarn. I've got some ends to weave in, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I want to make sure that I'm weaving in my ends on the inside of the pillow cover. So I'm going to make sure that I'm doing it on this side, not this side. So go ahead and weave in your ends, and then we'll put on our edging, and then I'll show you how to make the beaded tassels, and we will put the rest of the pillow together. We want to put a nice edging on each side of our pillow cover. So here's how we're going to do it. I'm starting in the top right corner of the pillow cover, and I'm going to insert my hook into the first stitch, and I'm going to reattach my color B, which was ivory, and I'm just going to single crochet across the top. So chain 1, single crochet in that same stitch, and in each stitch across. Okay, so in the final stitch of this row, I'm going to put 3 single crochets, and that is going to help me to round the corner. And then we're going to start down the first side. And the way that we're going to do this is we are going to put 2 single crochets in each. We're going to call these just color blocks. So this is the brown color block, the white one, the brown one, the white one. So in each of these sections, we're going to be putting 2 single crochets. This green and brown one, that's one section because that's half and half there. So my best advice for when you're putting an edging on something that doesn't actually have stitches to work into, like the sides of this pillow cover, is to get as close to the edge as you can and only insert your hook into 1 strand of yarn. And that's going to help your single crochets to look much more neat and even. The most common problem when you're single crocheting like this down an edge is that the bottoms of your single crochets, especially when they are an opposite color from what you're crocheting against, if you go under different amounts of yarn, like 2 strands here, 1 strand here, 3 strands here, these V's are going to reach down farther and it's going to look really jagged. And that's the most common issue that you have when you're doing this. So just make sure that you're only inserting into 1 strand at a time. Sometimes it takes a little bit of work to get it in there real good, but it's definitely worth it for the finished look. So I'm just going to go ahead and single crochet all the way down this edge, 2, 2, 2, 2, all the way down. When I get to the end and I'm putting my second one in this color block, I'm going to put 3 single crochets in that where the second one would go. Instead of putting 1, I'll put 3, and that's going to help me to round the corner to the bottom. Okay, so this is the second corner, and we're going to put our stitch there, and then we're going to go ahead and do 2 more right into that same place, and that's going to help us to round this corner. And then we're just going to single crochet along the bottom into each stitch. Okay, this is the end of the bottom edge. My final stitch, I'm going to put 3 single crochets here, again, to help me round the corner. And then we're going to do our final edge going back up to the top of the pillow cover. So once again, we're going to do 2 single crochets in each color section, and I want to show you one thing that's just a little bit different on this particular edge is that this is the edge that has the sort of detached white sections, and those were the chain 2s when we had to make that jump from here to here. That's the chain 2. And so when you get to that part, I just want to make sure that you don't put your single crochets into that white chunk. You're going to want to make sure that you put it into the green. If you put it into the white, you're going to have a little bit of a hole on the side of your pillow, and you don't want that. So make sure that you are putting your hook into a loop somewhere along here for your 2 single crochets that go in that section. You're just going to single crochet all the way up the edge, and when you get to the end, put your 3 single crochets in the final one, and then you're just going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the very first single crochet that you made. Okay, this is the end of the final edge. I'm going to go ahead and put my 3 single crochets in the corner here, and I'm going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the very first single crochet that we made on that top edge. Go ahead and fasten off your yarn and weave in both of those ends. To make the tassels for this pillow, we are going to use color B, which is the ivory. and I'm going to teach you how to do this. It's so easy. What I have here is just a piece of cardstock that is the size of a credit card, about 2 inches tall. It doesn't really matter how wide it is as long as it's wide enough that you can wrap yarn around it without it falling off. So you want this to be about 2 inches tall in this case. Of course, if you wanted to make taller tassels, you would use a taller card. And what we're going to do first is cut a length of yarn, I don't know, 6 to 8 inches long, not a big deal, and then we're going to do another one. Set those aside for a moment, and then take your yarn and wrap it around. I wrapped mine around 20 times for this size of a tassel. It doesn't matter how many times you wrap it around as long as you're consistent with each tassel, because you want these to look the same. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to start, leave a little bit of a tail here, and then wrap it. So 1 full time, 2 full times, 3, 4, 5, get that out of the way, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And then you're going to cut it down at the bottom. And then take one of your lengths that you cut in the very beginning, and you're just going to sneak it under. Pull it up to the top of the card and tie a nice tight double knot. Okay, and then hang on to those 2 strands and slide your tassel off of the card. And then you're going to take your scissors and you're just going to cut through these loops, pulling like this so you make sure that you're getting it right in the center there, and just cut through those loops. Make sure you got them all. Sometimes a couple of them get missed there. Okay, and we'll trim this up at the end. Go ahead and take the second length of rope that you have and lay it down in front of you. And then lay your tassel down right where you want it to be gathered. And so I like just a kind of a nice round ball on top there. So I'm going to do it's probably about 1/2 inch down. And you can measure it to be exactly sure, but I have found that eyeballing it does produce pretty accurate results. So then you're going to just tie that tight, and then tie one more knot. Make sure you get it nice and tight. If you look really close on your tassel, the knot that you just tied, these are the strands that are from that knot. One of them already goes nicely into the tassel, and you're not even going to be able to tell that it's part of that knot. But the other one goes up, and when you pull it down like this, it just looks really bad. So what we're going to do is thread that onto a yarn needle. And then you're just going to poke it back on top of that knot and down through like that, and give it a little bit of a pull, and it's going to disappear into your tassel. Okay, so go ahead and trim the bottom of your tassel. Make sure all those little pieces are nice and uniform. And that's your tassel, and this is what you're going to use to attach it to your pillow. So go ahead and make however many tassels you want for your pillow, and I'm going to show you how to attach these to the front. You're going to want to make sure that you put those on before you sew the pillow together, because you won't be able to get to the inside of this fabric once you've done that. So I have 49 stitches across, and the reason that I had you start with an odd number even if you didn't do the same amount of stitches that I did is because I wanted to make sure that your first tassel goes right dead center. And so we wanted an odd number, and so for me with 49 stitches I know that I need to count into the 25th stitch in order to put this tassel right in the center. Because if I have the 1 in the middle and then 24 on this side, 24 on this side, and that equals 49. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread one side of my tassel. And I should tell you, actually, before I do this, this would be the time that if you wanted to add some beads to your tassel, you could do it now. And what you would do is thread both of these through a needle together, and then you would stick the needle through the bead and bring it down to rest right on top of this little circle right here. It does give it a really cute look, and I went through several different styles of beads to see what I would want to add to this pillow, and I ended up deciding that I liked it the most with no beads. You might think differently though, so before you attach these tassels, if you want to play around with that, there are so many fun beads at Hobby Lobby. You can just go and stand in the aisle and get inspired and probably come home with way more packages of beads than you need. It's kind of just like when you stand in the yarn aisle and then come home with way too much yarn. So that's just another fun craft that you can add to this pillow. I am not going to do beads though, so I'm just going to go ahead and thread one of these through, and then I'm going to count. I like to use something to count in. And I am going to attach my tassels, let's do right here, so that the circle part is over this row that has both the green and the brown in it, okay? So I'm going to attach them with the string to this stitch, this ivory stitch right here. So I'm going to go ahead and count in 25. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. This is my 25th stitch right here. So I am going to put my yarn needle on the left side of that stitch and bring it through. And then I'm going to thread the other one. And I'm going to stick it through the right side of that 25th stitch. And then I'm going to turn my work over. And I'm going to tie a double knot. I'm going to trim these up a little bit. I don't want them to come loose, so I'm not going to go right up to the knot, but this is all going to be hidden on the inside of our pillow anyway. So make that pretty again. That is our first tassel. Now I went through with all of my tassels before I filmed this, and I placed them exactly how far apart I wanted them to be, and then I figured out how many stitches between here and here I needed to skip in order to put the correct amount of space between each tassel, and for me that number was 7. So if you did something different, you started with a different chain amount, or you want fewer tassels, or you want more tassels, then you can figure out where exactly you want yours to be placed. For me, I want 7 stitches between each tassel. So I'm going to go ahead and thread my next one, and then I'm going to count. This was the one that I just did. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the next one is where I'm going to attach my next tassel. Put it on both sides of that ivory stitch there and pull it through. Tie my knot. Trim my ends. Probably not a whole lot of point in making these pretty right now because they're going to keep getting messed up every time I turn it over. But okay, so go ahead and attach all of your tassels exactly how you want them to be. If you have a little bit of fabric glue, it would not hurt when you're done, to just put a little dab of fabric glue right there on the bottom of that ball so that it sticks where it is, and then the only thing that's going to be able to move is the actual tassel itself. I am going to go ahead and do that so that these stay in place really nicely. So go ahead, and if you are doing tassels across the front, attach them, and then we will meet back together at the end of that to seam together our pillow. We're going to start in the top left corner and making sure that the right sides of both of the pieces of fabric are facing out. So this one I can see, and then when I turn the pillow over, I can still see the nice pattern there. I'm going to insert my hook into the little hole that's created where the 3 single crochets were, where we rounded each corner. I'm going to do that through both layers. And you don't need your pillow insert yet. You're not going to need that until the final edge. So go ahead and attach your edging yarn. You can use the ivory that we used throughout the entire pillow. I wanted to put a little bit of a fur edging on mine, so I'm using this Forever Style by Yarn-Bee also, and it's in the color Ivory. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this through and attach with a chain 1. And then since I'm already in that hole for the 3 single crochets, I'm going to go ahead and do 3 single crochets, and we are going to be spike stitching all the way around the edge again. So instead of working in the top loops, we are working in the bottom of the stitches from the previous round of edging. So same thing we did before. We're going to be working where these V's come together. We're going to go right into that little hole. Okay, and it's very easy to see on this side where those V's are. Not so easy to see from the inside of the other side of the pillow, but not impossible. It's just going to take a little bit of effort. And so go ahead and single crochet spike stitch all the way around, putting your 3 single crochets in the holes where the 3 single crochets were each time, and you're going to go through, you're going to go down the side, along the bottom, up the other side, and then we will meet back at this point and I'll show you how to insert the pillow. Once you've done 3 of your edges, you can go ahead and take your pillow insert and put it in. Once again, this is just a 12-inch pillow insert. You can find them at Hobby Lobby. They have all different sizes. Just make sure that the corners are in there good and not smushed in a strange way. You're going to want your pillow to lay nicely. Okay, so that is in now, and I'm just going to reinsert my hook into this loop here. And go ahead and continue to stitch across the top. It's a little bit trickier when you are closing in the pillow. But you're just going to go ahead and single crochet spike stitch all the way across until the pillow is completely enclosed. When you get to your final corner, just go ahead and slip stitch to one of your stitches. You really can't see the stitches because of the fur yarn, but you can kind of feel around for one and slip stitch there. And what I like to do, just to give the pillow a really nice finished look, is to chain 1 and turn, and then I'm going to go around and I am going to do my edging one more time, and I'm still spike stitching, so I'm still going into where the V's meet down here, which is a little bit tough to see, but not terrible. And the fur yarn is so forgiving that as long as you're kind of keeping an eye on what you're doing and making sure that you're not inserting your hook in just crazy random places, you're going to end up with a nice edging. That's one of the things that I love about fur yarn, is it is very forgiving. As difficult as it is to work with, it usually ends up looking really nice at the end. So go ahead and go the entire length of your pillow all the way around, and when you get back to this corner again, go ahead and join with a slip stitch and you'll be done. Thanks for following along with this tutorial. I'd love to see your finished project, so be sure to tag me on Facebook or Instagram and use hashtag AutumnBohoPillow. Don't forget to subscribe and be sure to visit my blog at yarnandchai.com for more easy modern patterns.